This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Shout out to all the folks who have to say it's seasonal allergies, not anything else. I'm right there with you. But let's still keep our distance. Here's what we got for you. An inside look at the setup for the G7 summit and how locals feel about hosting a conference of global leaders. Then a job I wish I could score, getting paid to eat. How goats are helping to control California wildfires one meal at a time. But first, here's what you need to know right now. A change today to the COVID safety rules in the workplace, making social distancing and mask requirements optional for the general job industry, with the exception of the healthcare sector. To be clear, this doesn't mean it will be an immediate return to normal in the workplace. Companies can still decide if they want to keep certain safety measures in place, but it basically eases the pressure of needing to have them or invest in things like plexiglass dividers. Unions and other safety advocates argue the rules should still apply to all jobs to make sure that every worker is protected. According to the CDC, currently, more than 35% of US adults have not received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, says it tailored specific requirements for healthcare settings since workers in those fields are often exposed to the virus from treating patients. Employees within the healthcare system are also getting more pressure to get vaccinated. At a Houston area hospital, nearly 200 staff members were suspended for not following a policy which required them to get the vaccine. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has already said employers can require the vaccines, but there's a long list of legal considerations that need to be followed before doing that. Several companies are choosing to wait to require the vaccines until they are fully approved by the Food and Drug Administration, not just granted emergency use authorization. The developer of the controversial Keystone XL oil pipeline called it quits this week after a decade of the project being volleyed between US presidents and the courts. The pipeline, which was developed by Canada-based TC Energy, would have carried 800,000 barrels of crude oil a day, nearly 2,000 miles, from Canada to the Gulf Coast. TC Energy had constructed about 300 miles of the $8 billion pipeline before their presidential permit was revoked by Biden his first day in office. TC Energy needed that permit from the State Department to construct the pipeline since it stretched across US territory. President Obama rejected that permit in 2015. President Trump reversed that decision in 2017. Construction started in 2018 but was halted because of court challenges. Now you get that volley imagery, right? Just back and forth. Oil and gas proponents said the pipeline would have created hundreds or even thousands of jobs. Environmentalists and indigenous tribes have opposed the pipeline from the very beginning because of its environmental impact. While the Keystone Pipeline project is shuttered, activists are still protesting at least 2 other pipeline projects. Just this week, environmental and tribal groups in Minnesota protested the construction of Line 3, a crude oil pipeline that'll run from Alberta, Canada to Wisconsin. Those groups want President Biden to rescind the permit for this pipeline as well. And the Dakota Access Pipeline, which will run crude oil from North Dakota to Illinois, was completed in 2017 and is operational, but it's undergoing an environmental review. This week, world leaders will meet in person for the first time since the pandemic began at the G7 summit. It also marks the president's first trip abroad since taking office. Today, Biden sat down with the UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The two leaders signed a new Atlantic Charter, which basically outlines several areas in which the countries agreed to work together for the benefit of humanity, including climate change, pandemics, technological warfare, and economic competition. A little history lesson for you. The original agreement was signed back in 1941 by then British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and former President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was basically a declaration of similar goals the two nations had after World War II. The G7 summit is taking place in a small village in Cornwall. Newsy's Luke Hanrahan gives us a look at the setup there and the mixed feelings locals have about hosting it.
Yes, that's right, Christian. I'm here in Carbis Bay in Cornwall for President Joe Biden's first overseas trip. I've been speaking to the locals in this remote part of the United Kingdom about the significance of world leaders coming to town.
A drizzly Thursday in the far southwest of Britain meant President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson had to cancel their planned trip to an island off the coast of Cornwall. leaving many residents of Carbis Bay eagerly anticipating an early glimpse of the leaders.
To have the American president in Cornwall, well, have him here, I think is wonderful. Hope we get a glimpse of him anyway.
Such a thing has never happened before and will never happen again. So it's really rather exciting. But I think it would be more exciting if we could actually see them, because they're in blacked out cars.
A big moment by any measure, as the newly elected president met the Prime Minister, joined by Dr. Jill Biden and newlywed Carrie Johnson. The couples took a stroll ahead of the G7 summit, which begins Friday.
We threw a few cans over the top.
For Nicholas Stringer, the barrier dividing him from his beer buddies is easily overcome. But for neighbours beyond the 10-foot fence, security is tighter.
It has been a little bit awkward, but it's an event that's not going to happen ever again. And the amount of stuff that I've seen, I'll probably never see again in my life.
This is as close as we can get to Carbis Bay Hotel, which is just 150 yards away down this hill. The Bidens and the Johnsons are currently meeting here, but the people inside the barrier perimeter have to use their passports to get in and out, and some of them have been paid as much as £14,000 to vacate their properties so the police can be closer to the world's leaders.
It's normally a busy time for us.
Kate Horrell, who runs a vegan restaurant not far away, is thousands of pounds down, and down on the summit's impact on the local environment.
We haven't actually seen any benefit ourselves, so it's a shame, because I really wanted to feel positive about it, but it's hard to remain positive when your business is just kind of getting hammered by this event happening.
Climate change is expected to be the focus both inside the summit and outside the boundaries of it, with protesters threatening to demonstrate en masse. For Newsy, I'm Luke Hanrahan in Cornwall.
You didn't ask for this, but when you're back, we're giving you animal content. You are welcome in advance. Usually it's a little weird to just watch people eat, but we here at ITL are going to make an exception for goats. Wildfire season has begun, and this year could be particularly devastating for some regions because of drought conditions. Newsy's Lindsay Thies shows us how some landowners are turning to a unique, environmentally friendly, and noisy little helper to help clear debris.
From the farms of Central California to the rocky hills of the Bay Area, this herd of more than 500 dairy and African boar goats is hard at work. They're an unconventional but effective tool to stop fires.
Well, we built a fence, I'd say probably about 5 acres. Looking at the brush and everything like that, it'll probably be a couple days here.
They clear away brush, eating it before it can become fuel for fires. And they eat a lot. A single 100-pound goat can chow down 12 pounds of green brush in a day. So do the math. There are about 560 adult and baby goats out here. By the end of today, they'll clear 6,700 pounds.
There's plenty of work in California.
These goats are just some of Mike Canaday's herds. At his Coalinga, California ranch, some 10,000 sheep and goats wait for their turn to ride the trailer to their latest deployment. Just the past couple of years, with wildfires intensifying, interest in large herds to cover vast stretches of land has his business booming.
There's some that the fire breaks that we cut with the goats stop the fire. When you can change people's lives in that way, that's an emotional thing that they don't have to go through, and it's just huge for us.
These goats can stretch their necks up to 7 feet, biting branches and low-lying leaves. They eat poison oak and can clear rocky cliffs, something other livestock can't do. And it's easier to control where the goats go to cut a fire break, unlike controlled burns, another method of removing wildfire fuel. All that's needed is a fence, a shepherd, and a couple of dogs.
All of this dead grass and brush around us is really fuel for a wildfire to burn. That's why hundreds of businesses, public agencies, even private property owners now all across the West are really turning to goats and goat herders, because for the goats, all of this is a buffet.
The fire break that the goats leave is much better than mowing or using herbicides.
Jeff Weiss is with the California Department of Transportation, which began to use just a handful of goats to reach rocky areas like bridges. It worked so well, they're now bringing in even larger herds on the sides of highways.
The fires are more intense. The fires actually can jump the highway. And even if they couldn't, if a fire starts on one side of the highway, it can go miles in one direction or the other, depending where the spark landed.
They're deploying ahead of what is likely to be a horrific wildfire season. The drought here is so bad, the risk level for the southwestern United States has been stuck at critical for weeks. In California, every county in the state is in moderate to exceptional drought. Exceptional is the highest level.
Even in non-drought years, we have fires, but in drought years, they're wicked and they cause a lot of damage.
A feast for goats, a life-saving tool for humans. It's the new reality in California. Lindsay Thies, Newsy, Fresno County.
You know, there's a version of the story where Lindsay is actually feeding one of them. Let's see if we can get a picture. Yeah, there, that's it. How's that for a palate cleanser? The pandemic has been tough on many of us, especially when it comes to our mental health. Now, a new study involving several million people shows where thoughts of suicide were highest across the country. National reporter Maya Rodriguez has more.
Aside from the infectious nature of COVID-19, there's also a mental strain the virus is placing on people the world over. And depression is at the top of the list.
People who took a depression screen to get a sense about how they were being impacted by the pandemic.
Paul Gianfrido is president of Mental Health America, a nonprofit that provided mental health screening for more than 2.5 million people all across the country in 2020. Then, they analyzed the data they collected.
We looked at suicidal thinking and self-harm thinking and discovered that 38% of the people who had taken a screen indicated that they had suicidal or self-harm thinking on more than half the days of the week.
Because of the sheer number of people who participated in the screening, Mental Health America delved into the numbers by location. Their findings? The states with the highest number of people with thoughts of suicide were California, Texas, and Florida. It's not necessarily surprising considering their large populations. But when it comes to the highest percentage of the population contemplating suicide, more rural states, Alaska, Wyoming, and Alabama, jump to the top spots.
All the changes, all the disruptions to their lives have had an effect, and we can't overlook this.
And the findings go deeper to county by county levels. The study found those with the highest percentage of people contemplating suicide included large counties like Bexar, Texas, where San Antonio is, Clark County, Nevada, where Las Vegas is, and Riverside, California, east of Los Angeles. But it also included smaller counties like Carroll and Whitley counties in Kentucky and Switzerland County, Indiana.
Even in these small counties that may not have the wherewithal or get the attention, there is a very deep-seated need in even those counties.
Ann Hartree is with the pharmaceutical company Lundbeck, which helped fund the independently conducted Mental Health America study.
When I saw these numbers, they are daunting, they are scary, but I think it's a really important view of reality that we gain so that we can actually start to step up and step into it and find even more to do about it.
That includes using $130 billion in available federal stimulus funding for local solutions.
Then you have the opportunity in a local area or in a state area to use some of these new block grant dollars that are coming from the federal government. We can build a system for everybody that would serve the needs of everybody at the earliest possible stages.
So that people never get to the ultimate stage. I'm Maya Rodriguez.
College legacy admissions have long been scrutinized, but Colorado recently became the first state to ban public universities from doing this. National reporter Thomas Hopaw says advocates for doing away with the legacy admission system hope that this move will spread nationwide.
One of the questions that kept coming up in every application was name the family members that attended the institution and what connection you have with the institution.
Let's look at a student's merits. Let's look at their hard work. Let's not, give somebody an upper hand just because their parents or their grandparents went to that university.
When someone applies to college, there's sometimes a box on the application asking about any relatives who attended the university. This is called legacy, something Pratik Dutta is far too familiar with.
That always, from the moment I was applying, rubbed me the wrong way. Like, why does that matter? When you are deciding my application, why would my family members and who attended the institution have any bearing on whether I should attend or not? When my parents left Bangladesh and immigrated here, they told me that this is the country where no matter what your last name is, no matter what your family looks like or your family background, you can make it as long as you have a positive attitude, you work hard, and you play by the rules. The concept of legacy preference, putting a thumb on the scale for those who have family connections, is diametrically opposed to those values.
Dutta has been fighting legacy admissions because he says it gives some students a leg up in the admissions process. According to a survey by Inside Higher Ed, 42% of private institutions and 6% of public institutions consider legacy status a factor in admissions. Now Pratik works in education policy. He says the practice of legacy admissions makes access to higher education less equitable.
Some even give legacy fee waivers. So every application you send, it's about 70, 80 bucks. Those fees are waived for those that have a family connection, which is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be waiving fees for those that are low income, those that are have hardships.
We don't want someone to get that preferential treatment just because they had that relationship established already.
Which is why State Representative Kyle Mullica says Colorado wanted to become the first state to ban legacy admissions for public universities. However, private schools like the University of Denver can still include legacy-related questions on applications.
We want somebody to be looked at based on their merits, based on their hard work, is really what we're trying to focus on here. And we're not trying to make it harder on you either if you have family that went there. We just want to try to create that equal level playing field and make sure that we're being a leader in that and making sure that that these students are getting a more equitable way of getting into school.
Pratik says one state doing this in the country is the key for more states to try and follow, which he and other advocates hope to see in the future.
Some institutions such as Texas Tech, Johns Hopkins, and some private schools have done this, but no other state has prohibited legacy preference in their state. Colorado is the first, but we do hope that this will allow more states to understand that this is a possibility, and we do hope that this is perpetuated across the country.
I'm Thomas Hoppo reporting.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Don't be shy. I'm just like you, a regular person. I tweet using one thumb at a time. I have an endless amount of tweet drafts that could get me fired, and I too could really use an edit button. Believers of the QAnon conspiracy theory have taken their guidance from an anonymous figure online. But it's not just believers who have been impacted. Some of their partners say they've been so entrenched by the conspiracy, they've questioned their own reality. Our partners at Coda Story spoke to husbands, wives, and partners about what it's like to watch a loved one turn to Q. Together, we produced a 3-part series to bring these perspectives to you. Each person is anonymous, and they share their own stories about losing a partner to a conspiracy theory. Here's part 2.
I was truly living in a completely different reality from the person I was married to. I put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that Q just wouldn't come up. As it grew and grew, this conspiracy in his mind, it kind of took over everything. We had met in college. We were very outdoorsy. That was kind of our thing. We used to go backpacking and camping and hiking. We could always make everything a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable. And it was a lot of fun. That declined around the time we got into Q. was a little bit more interested in conspiracy theories than the average person. It took a turn when Trump showed up. It wasn't that he was a Trump supporter or even a Republican, so it didn't really stem from his political affiliation at all. It really just kind of accelerated to a point where we were not living in the same reality anymore. We had a couple of times where Q had said that the world was coming to an end. Tonight's the night, it's happening right now. We have to pack up. You have to say goodbye to your family. The internet's going to go down, and then that's going to be our signal from Q that the world is ending. And it was a very scary thing to live through. Somebody who has that much conviction that the world's going to end at 9:55 that night. You kind of start to lose your own sense and your own confidence in what you believe to be true when you're just constantly being inundated by QAnon stuff. And you start to wonder if maybe you're the one who's not informed. Those moments were very scary. I can't say I was super confident that the world wasn't going to end, even though logically it wasn't. I think kind of what kept me staying is that it feels so deceptively and frustratingly easy to fix, especially once he started talking about flat earth, stuff like that. And there's kind of this sense of like, oh my God, I should be able to convince him that the earth is round. I can do this, right? It can be really hard to let go. He didn't understand it. He felt that I was ending something good over political disagreements. Once you get past debating, just political preferences into debating what's real and what's not, it just becomes this really draining, really exhausting thing. Q is mainstream knowledge now. My parents know what it is. They just asked me about it. Like, was that QAnon? Was that what he was into? So it kind of came late, this validation. This is the kind of thing that does break up relationships. This might be a tipping point for a lot of people's family members. I hope that there are some people who finally start to see it a little bit more clearly now. If you're deciding to stay in a relationship on any level with somebody who believes in this stuff, you need to make sure you don't lose your own footing in the process, your own sense of what's real and what's not. Because you almost feel like you can fight it, and maybe you can. I couldn't.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with more In the Loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.